Hey guys, it's me again. Thought I would do a short one today. Really, a short one. Under a half hour, I promise. I gave you a semi-break yesterday. I put up a joke video. Sad thing is that video, which I titled "A 2-Hour Treatise on Laundry Detergent," actually, just as right now, has actually gotten a few more views than things that were recorded even several days before, such as Double Image and John Taylor and the Gary Peacock video. So that's a bit sad, but I guess that'll tell you how well known those folks are, maybe. Today, you might notice some, my shelf behind me. I'm doing some changing. I used to have a big black thing on there, which Carm asked me if it was a speaker, because that's what it looked like from a distance. Actually, it was just a plastic CD holder that actually went all the way up to the ceiling and rubbed up against the ceiling, so much so that I couldn't put a CD in the top slot because they angle upwards. And I was already banging against the ceiling. The sad thing is, and you can see it there, I gotta get my fingers together. Right there where I'm pointing is my step stool ladder. And in order to get just about any of those CDs out, except for the ones in the very bottom rung, I would have to get on my step stool ladder. And, it became just like this is just a disaster waiting to happen, and I can see myself falling off there, and I don't have health insurance or anything, so, forget that. So what I did, I moved it off and I have it in another section of the room, and one of these days I'm going to grab my little cam here, my little camera, and show you maybe a little bit more around the room. But what I did decide to put up on the top shelf, you can't really tell what's on there. It's vinyl, and it's a very small selection of vinyl. It's a real specialty group of vinyl. It's only vinyl that has never been released on CD. Because obviously I have a lot of vinyl. I have a lot of vinyl where I bought the CDs. I have a bunch of vinyl where the CDs came out and I missed the CDs, but they were released on CDs. That's not up there. That's strictly vinyl stuff that as I come across them, I'm going to stick them on the shelf there, kind of as a reminder to myself to keep looking for those things. And there's some things on there. A lot of them I've shown already. The mainstream jazz guitarist Eddie Duran Ginza, Gary Burton's Picture This. I'm trying to do this from memory. Tom Vandergel's Patience album. John Abercrombie, the Straight Flight, the trio album with him doing standards that wasn't on ECM. I've also got 2 John Abercrombie quartet albums up there. However, I've read that those 3 quartet albums that he did in the late 70s, early 80s with Richie Bayrock on piano are supposed to actually come out on ECM on CD. And that was announced a while ago, and it should have been out by now. But anyway, that's what I got up there, my specialty vinyl. Or my rare vinyl of these things. Hey, I'm still waiting here. And there's some that I'm glad to have taken off the shelf, like Terry Riley's Lifespan album, which was my #1 album that I for I don't know, almost 20 years, I guess, of albums that were my favorites, and I was dying for them to come out on CD, and they finally did. Okay, I don't want to make this any longer than it needs to be. Today I'm going to do Roger Eno, Brian Eno's brother. And I'm going to avoid doing any artists, that he's associated with for the most part, because I tend to go, okay, I got into Roger Eno, and from there I had this guy on that album. But for a lot of people, including myself, I think this actually may have been the first thing that he appeared on. This is his brother's. This is Brian Eno's disc that he does appear on. He's co-credited on this, as well as Daniel Lanois, the Canadian studio owner, engineer, guitarist, sometimes vocalist as well. But and it's a little hard to tell exactly what Roger Eno's contributions are, because unfortunately they don't list any instrumentation or anything. But Roger Eno's primarily a keyboard player himself. This is a good album. It's a good album. It's the only problem I have with it is I love the pieces. They're very short. They're very short. So it's a little. Sometimes you just start digging into a piece, and oh my God, it's over. A lot of 3-minute pieces on here. Now, his first official solo album. Why would I put these in order? Because And also one thing I don't have here because I couldn't find the discs is his contributions to various artist compilations. He's got 2 or 3 tracks on Music for Films. I think it's Music for Films 3, Volume 3, and a couple other compilations put out by. There was one for that Gyroscope label that was around for a short time. And there was a various artists compilation album called Future Perfect, which was a little bit of a confusing compilation. Also had some Harold Budd stuff on there. Had a couple tracks credited to Roger Eno. The problem with that album is it was kind of a sampler album of the Gyroscope label. I think that was the name of it, Gyroscope? I'll look it up. Yeah, Gyroscope. It was around for a short while. It was partially a sampler, but they also included tracks on there that didn't make it onto the albums. So it got a little confusing. So I don't know if the Roger Eno tracks on there were ones that made it onto one of his albums or not, or whether they were unique to that. I'm pretty sure the Music for Films 3, the selections he has on there were unique to that Music for Films album. But his first real album, I remember seeing this on vinyl. I don't think I bought it on vinyl. Maybe I did. Was this one about, I didn't know, 85? I'm going to guess it's 85. And I got to crank my light up here now so I can see this. Sorry, guys. 1985. A good guess on my part. Here's a funny thing. I didn't even know I had this album. I know the album in terms of I remember seeing it in the shops, and until I was digging things out of my crates today, because, hey, I'm home, and I've been doing that a lot these last 2 weeks, especially last week. I'm just digging through my storage baskets here of just tons of CDs, and came across this. I don't recall buying it. Here's the funny thing. It wasn't in my computer. Now, I buy all my CDs that I buy, the first thing, I don't even play them first. First thing I do, take them out, dump them into the computer, transfer them to a decent quality MP3, and I listen through my computer speakers because I got a real good, solid, loud bass speaker on there. So I listen through there. It's a 3-speaker setup, but it's actually better than my high quality Sony receiver. As good a receiver as it is, only has bookshelf speakers on it. So even though I have a CD player there, I very rarely use it. I do use it on occasions. But I pretty much dumped them into the computer, and my computer, the one that I'm recording this very video on, is probably 10 years old now. It's an old desktop computer, and I did not have this dumped into my computer, which means I haven't played this for at least 10 years, which just amazed me, because I had 2 of the albums that I have by him, and I only have a handful, not at all a real sampling of his material. 2 of the 5 that I have weren't in the computer, which means it's been at least 10 years since I heard them. When I played this, I had no recollection of it, oddly enough. And it was not what I expected, because everybody knows Brian Eno's the electronic thing, and Roger Eno, from what I remember more from, probably this is the album that I've listened to the most, The Long Walk, and some other things he did kind of guesting on other people's albums, is he does a bit more acoustic piano oriented, and seems to have a love of classical chamber music, especially small ensembles. At least that's what a lot of his material that he writes is. And that's what I tend to think of when I think of Roger Eno. And when I put this on, I was very pleasantly surprised. And I don't know when I got this. It had to be over 10 years ago. It wasn't on my computer, which means I haven't heard it for 10 years. I don't know if I ever heard it until today. It was open. I'm guessing I did. But I put it on, expecting the thing that I associate with Roger Eno is more of the classical vibe, the acoustic piano, and he plays with like cello players and horn players and stuff like that. Not jazz, very much of a classical chamber kind of vibe that he likes to do. And what I heard here, which pleasantly surprised me, was an album that sounds very much like the two collaborations that his brother Brian Eno did with Harold Budd. It sounded like The Plateau of Mirror, which is ambient number 2, and The Pearl, which is an album that the two of them recorded later on. Of course, Roger Eno was not on either one of those, but it's very much a very processed acoustic piano sound. So processed to the point that I couldn't tell at first. I thought it might be a very good electric piano, because I know Harold Budd a lot of times will play an electric piano, but it has a sound to it that sounds very much like an acoustic with that's treated after the fact with various sound manipulation. I believe, from what I've read, only just by going online today, that this is primarily probably acoustic piano, and that Brian Eno does the actual treatments on it, substantial treatments, and the sound is, which is something that he did, with the two discs with Harold Budd. So it's not surprising that it would sound like that. Treatments by Brian Eno is the credit. Otherwise, everything here was performed, actually played entirely by Roger Eno. This is very good, man. I'm going to give this one another spin. Very much, if you like the Harold Budd and Brian Eno, the only two albums they did together, and in fact, it sounds like a lot of Harold Budd solo albums. Not the electronic ones as much as the ones that Harold Budd's done in recent years, where he played a lot of just acoustic piano. It treated, again, a lot of echoey reverberation and stuff like that on there. But this is really good, and I don't know if I ever heard it until today. See, unusual, something I did today is usually when I make these videos, I have these albums that I'm very, very familiar with, that I've listened to for in a lot of cases 30 years, but I haven't actually listened to them prior to making the video, or I've listened to some and not others. So every once in a while, what I end up doing invariably is, after I make the videos, all those records that I showed, I end up playing them after. Probably not the best way to go around it, because on a few occasions, I've caught myself replaying those, and then I said, oh, wait a minute, that's different than I recalled, and I said this and that in the video. What am I going to do? Go back and delete the video and do the whole video over again? Not the way I talk, Do I really want to replace a 45-minute video or an hour-long video with an hour and 10-minute-long video saying, I was wrong about this Mark Isham record, it really is blah, blah, blah. But I have done that to a certain extent, where I've been a bit wrong about maybe in some cases the musical direction of some of the individual albums, not overall, but just one or two albums here and there that I haven't listened to for many years, and I would say it kind of sounds like this, and maybe it's not quite like that. I'm finding when I go back and listen. This time I made a difference because I played all of these before today, because, like I said, I have no recollection of voices whatsoever. I played this one. This is probably the one that got the most spins, only because it was the one that was in my computer. This is more of, I guess, what I think of, because this is the one that I got that initially got the most initial plays. It's not, I don't think it's the first one I got by him. But this is more of, there's guest musicians on there playing various instruments. He sticks primarily, Roger that is, sticks primarily to acoustic piano, where there's a lot of acoustic piano in there, it seems. And he's got quite a lot of musicians helping him out here. There's a guy that actually speaks a spoken word poem on one track. There's a violin player, a viola player who also plays violin. So it's a lot of acoustic instruments. Banjo, lap steel guitar player. Not banjo in the country sense, though. A percussionist. An entire the Norfolk Reeds, which is a reed section, a wind section. Guitarist, which I don't really remember hearing much guitar. Harmonica, I don't remember hearing much harmonica. But so that's got the chamber music vibe, and it's kind of pretty stuff, shorter tunes for the most part. And this bonus disc, which is a little bit of a bee in my bonnet sometimes, because the album is about 56 minutes long, and the bonus disc has 4 tracks, which are about 17 minutes long, and it ends up equaling about 73 minutes, and you could fit that all onto one disc, so why do it, Either leave, if you don't think the bonus disc is up to snuff with the other material, leave it off, and, if it deserves to be, pressed and presented as this is, stick it on there, And the thing is two of the 4 tracks, pretty much fit in with the music that's on the regular album, and two don't. Two are really out of left field. One of them's kind of an electronic thing where most of it's acoustic, and it's not bad. But oh, my TV, this is the second time that happened to me while I'm doing a video. My TV turned on, and it's different. There's two of the tracks on the bonus disc are different from the material on the album, but they're not bad. It's just a bit of a jarring change. But I don't know why. You could have fit it all onto one disc, and God knows I probably paid extra for it, I'm sure. And here's one that I expected not to like, and it's okay. This is the other one I didn't have in my computer. I kind of remember getting this one. I don't remember when, but this is a collaborative album with Roger Enos and Lowell Hammond, who's also a keyboard player. So it's two keyboard players. Now in this one, Roger Enos credited also with playing some guitar, which I don't recall seeing on at least the other CDs of his that I have. I mean, he primarily plays keyboards, but he also is listed with playing guitar, while Lowell Hammond also plays keyboards. They both play synthesizer and piano, and Lowell Hammond does loops and treatments. And the thing that I don't dig about this one, I'd listen to it again, is, my thing that I've got with albums that put techno beats on music. It's one thing if it's an old techno album, but the problem is you've got the kind of, when you hear that it's two keyboard players, you kind of expect a lot of keyboard-oriented music. And the album has a lot of that. But what breaks it up and really kind of destroys your focus, at least in my way of thinking, is all of a sudden you've got several tracks mixed in here, 3 or 4, and there's a lot of tracks on here. There's, I don't know, like 13 tracks it looks like, something like that. And, you've got these keyboard instrumentals, which are interesting. I wouldn't say they're real drifty, but they're not aggressive or even very rhythmic. And then all of a sudden, the techno beats come in between, and to me, it ruins my concentration in a way, because as soon as I hear a techno beat, you're in that mode of like tapping your foot and listening for a beat. And the other tracks, when you don't have a real strong rhythm or any drums at all, drum sounds at all, you kind of drift along to it. I mean, lots of artists do that, and I just don't like it, and that's the kind of thing that breaks up. So, what I do with these is when I tend to, I copy them in my computer, I'll figure out which ones have the techno beats, and I'll change the song order, and by changing the numbers in my computer. So I put all the songs like with a techno beat first, so you get those all over with first, and then you get all the drifty stuff after that, and it doesn't break up the ambiance. I wouldn't do it the other way around, because you're sitting there drifting, this is nice, and all of a sudden the techno beat comes in, which ruins the mood for me. So I won't skip over tracks when I listen to albums, I never do, but I would do something like figure out which ones are the ones with the drums, and just play them first, and then they're kind of out of the way, and I got into it, and I got the rhythm, and now I'm going to listen to the floaty stuff, the stuff that's less rooted in rhythm. Only got 2 more. Then Roger, this was a hard one to get. Roger Enos, called The Night Garden, or Night Garden. I remember seeing this online. I don't know what attracted my attention to look for a Roger Enos disc at this particular time. This is an ambient music album, and just about the only one where Roger Enos really set out to create ambient music, even though the Voices album, his first solo album, very much fits that mold as well. He never stated what he was trying to do was make an album like his brother Brian's back then. In this one, he initially had recorded some things that he thought were backing tracks for him to play other things over, kind of quieter blankets that you would solo on or put melodies on top of or something like that. And listening back to those blanket tracks that he made, and only a couple of them, he decided, wow, they work on their own. Let me make a whole album of these kinds of things and not go after that thing without, he's going to put something over on top of this. So initially he didn't start out to make an ambient album, but as he got the first couple tracks done for something else, he thought, maybe I'll just go with this. And the thing that I like about it, one of the things, and it's probably one of those things that only matters to real nerds, is that he actually recorded this he's got a shed or something. I guess it has electric, obviously, in England where he lives, and he's got his recording studio set up there. This is from 1995, by the way. And he recorded it in the summertime. Okay, so I guess, weather permitting type of thing. He would play out in this garden shed that he has as his studio set up, and in the warm summer evenings. And the music, I guess, was audibly set up. There were some small speakers or something, because it would play through his garden, he said. So I guess he's got this, house. Obviously, he's not in an apartment complex. He's got this house where he's in this garden shed that he has, I guess in the summer times at least, set up as a recording studio, recording the music, and having probably those outdoor speakers, those smaller outdoor speakers, something like that. And he actually had it play through the garden. I think this is something that a way that Steve Roach actually records some of his music sometimes. He lives out in the desert, and I know he said he sends the music out there actually, and maybe even sits and listens to some of the playback of it in the desert there. And so it sounds like that kind of thing was done here. So he was very tuned into throughout this summer of 95 of kind of really taking it seriously, and it's a good album. It's weird because it starts off with a little tart piece, and at first it seems like a strange setting, a little thin and angular on the first keyboard when you first hear the synthesizer come in at the beginning, and you're like, oh, this isn't going to be really ambient, and then right after that it kind of settles down. It's a good one, and I remember going back and looking out of curiosity a few years later. It's on a small label. Oh, well, it's on voice print, but voice prints are weird in the U.S. They're sometimes very expensive and sometimes impossible to get. British label, I guess, but I don't know. They really could and should do a better job with getting some distribution in the U.S., because for single albums, I've seen some incredible prices. And I'm talking about things that are in print. Here's another oddball one. And I thought it was on an obscure label, and it's not. This is another voice print. But here's one that you may not be familiar with, even if you're familiar with his other stuff. It's a live album. It's called Islands. And I was really attracted to this one. I'm kind of glad that I snapped it up when I did, because I did look a few years later, and I don't know what the status of it is right now, and it was not available. Again, another voice print, and voice print is weird with their availability. It's recorded at a live concert, and it's half and half. About 24 minutes of it is Roger, who, if you're familiar with Brian Eno and his ambient music series, Roger is another performer that plays like an electronic kind of zither, very processed, very beautiful, and I have about 3 or 4 of his solo albums. And this recorded December 1989 at the same festival they both appeared at separately. They didn't play together. And the Roger stuff has 3 of his zither pieces, about 24 minutes. And Roger Enos does a keyboard thing. Sounds like solo. There's really very little information in here. But it sounds like Roger totally on his own solo, just on keyboards, playing a 20-minute and 31-second piece. Only problem with this, not the greatest sound. It almost doesn't sound like it was intended on being recorded for an album. It's almost like they might have done like a soundboard recording that couldn't be remixed or something like that. Or even open-air microphones, because the sound is not great. It's not a real obstruction to enjoying the music, but it's, for a record from this time period, you go back to, it doesn't sound as good as Voices, which was 4 years before this even. So it's clearly not a studio recording. Once you adjust slightly, it's not horrendous, it's not bootleg quality, but it's also not a real high-end, recordingly engineered thing, that was done very good, very well. But it's worth it. I wouldn't maybe spend a fortune on it. That's all the Roger Enos I have. I almost said Brian Eno. And he's done much more. And I kind of took a quick look on Amazon before I came on here. And so, some much more recent things, and he even has a compilation double disc on Amazon that I saw that's available anywhere. That is a compilation. It doesn't appear to be two complete albums, even though it's two discs. It appears to be rather a selection of tracks from albums of his that are out of print. That frustrates me a little bit too, because the albums are out of print. Why don't you just, even if you're going to put them together in a set, just reproduce the full entire albums? But that's Roger Eno. Certainly different than his brother. At times he skirts along the same edge, but he does that classical chamber music thing that is different than anything that Brian Eno's done. Certainly valid in his own right as a composer, recording artist. And like I said, I'm not showing some of the compilation of music for films things that he did and things like that. Apparently he also does soundtracks. I don't know if or at least some music that are used in movie soundtracks. I don't know to what extent those are available, depending on who else has done the soundtrack and all that. A lot of cases, they'll just have one or two pieces created specifically by an artist for a soundtrack, and he may not be the main soundtrack composer. And those pieces may or may not end up on soundtrack albums. Okay, guys, I'm going to keep it under half hour today, I promised. So, again, I've got, a whole bunch of artists I want to do, and I can't find the discs for, and so I have located a few things. So, you might get a Bill Connors video soon if anybody's interested for the guitarist. And, okay, guys, I hope everything's going great. It's early in the week. I hope everybody's having a great week. And, as my buddy Carm says, peace, love, and joy. I'll see you soon.